Okay, I will call the Willington Board of Education Policy Committee to order. It is 7:01 on May 16th, 2022. We have really a few things on our agenda tonight under policy review. We have the dress code, we have minutes and vote recording, we have public participation in board meetings, and then the use of private vehicles. And then we have a future plan to talk about administering medication, the Narcan one, but that's for a future meeting. So I'm going to share my screen and get you going here on this. So this one, starting with dress code, I think is going to be fast. You had this presentation. We were looking at one thing, and I think it was you that brought it up. And it was really talking about what we'll call the bottom half of the body.
Yep.
And so what we came up with was this line here: shorts, pants, and or dresses, skirts that completely cover the buttocks. That is what students may wear. This may become have some relationship to gender. The only other thing that you could do there was just say clothing must cover the buttocks without having to get into whatever that clothing is, if it gets out of shorts, pants, dresses, or skirts. So those are my thoughts. Everything else I think in here is the same you saw from last time. So thoughts on that? How would you like that worded?
I think that's good.
Sounds okay to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in
Keep it.
case of some of the boys that wear the pants that go low, that would cover that also,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so again, the changes that were in here were red were the things you made last time. I shared them back out to Mary Kay at the middle school, but this would be obviously a district-wide policy. You made the adjustment to number 7. And so unless there's something else you want to change in here, this would go to the full board for first reading for approval, towards approval at their next meeting. Herb?
This isn't necessarily a change, but in number 4, if they're wearing clothing, say a t-shirt, and they can put the name of their church or a cross or something like that. And also on identity, can you clarify that a little more? Is that where they could put that they're a part of the club that we have, the gender club there?
So that's only one example, sure, but they could do anything. They could say they're part of the skateboard club. They could say they are part of the FFA outside of school. They could, anything that is connected to their identity, which you don't really have any say over as long as it's appropriate for school.
Yeah.
I think
The
the scouts
athletic
would
t-shirt.
fall under that.
Yeah. Athletic t-shirts or cheerleading t-shirts.
Mhm.
So it would be up to the principal anyway to determine whether it's appropriate or not, right?
Yeah, if it become disruptive, obviously, if it's about their religious beliefs, it's one thing. If it's going against someone else's religious beliefs and it's attacking out, that would be something that they have to, figure out how to deal with.
Phil, have we ever had a big problem with this in the past?
I would say a big problem, no. I would say that it's been challenged, and that's why the students really wanted to come up with something that was a little more appropriate. This is an older policy. Again, this was the last time this was done here. Ooh, the date is not on this one. Oh, that's because we rewrote this entire policy. I think it's at least 10 years old now. And so trying to come up with something that is a little more enforceable, and not really biased, I would say, this is what was come up with. So this was run past staff members. It was initially done through a student group who was just targeting this. This is what they worked on. At the middle school, they had some long discussions with the principal. And they felt like this clarified what they could and could not do, and tried to keep it positive as opposed to you shall not, you shall not, you shall not.
Yeah. So they're pretty comfortable with this. The way it
Yes.
is.
Yes. I would call this a model policy of joint development, just because they were the ones that I didn't give them any draft. They looked at what your current policy was and they spun it to this, and you made your adjustments based upon the board's recommendation. That's what you'd be sending to the full board.
And did the administrative council look at it? So it applies to the center school? Lisa
Yeah.
feels it applies there also?
Yeah, I shared it with
Okay.
the admin team.
Okay.
And number 7 simply means that the video equipment that we have should be able to pick them up and identify them. In other words, they shouldn't be wearing a hood or
Hmm.
dark
Right, that's the idea.
clothes on it.
Correct.
How about a mask?
Same thing. They have to be identifiable. Although with hair showing and the top part of your face, we could identify kids because we're used to that when we were wearing masks, but full face mask would not be allowed.
Yeah, full face.
Any other comments on this policy here? Shall we send it along?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were the students who worked on this going to present to the full board, or?
I can ask them if they're interested.
I think that's a great idea, Brianna.
I would like at least one to be there just to speak to it. I mean, I don't, sometimes it's when you have a bunch, but I'm sure they'd be willing to do what they did last time for you.
They did a really great job.
Yeah. Okay, so let me close this one. All right, so the next policy is, this is the public participation board meeting. And this was, we were trying to do this hand in hand with minutes. And I also mentioned about recording. And so let me just kind of tell you what I did. When I looked at other policies across the state, this was one of the things that popped up. The thing that's in red here, no disruptive conduct shall be permitted. If disruptive conduct is interfering with the conduct of the board meeting, the chairman may terminate the offending person's right of addressing the board, or if necessary, clear the room of all non-members so the board may continue the meeting. And I think that gets to the point of that you're a meeting in public, not a public meeting. And so really, if what they're doing is disrupting, and you hope you never have to use this, but when you're, it's honestly, it's kind of interesting with Zoom because it's almost easier with Zoom. You can just mute somebody and turn off their camera, and really they lose their voice, and they cannot be as disruptive. You know, the chat's not on, things like that. When you're in person and you want to think about in person, what would that look like? And I'm sure if you watch the news at all, within the last year, I'm sure you've seen some of the disruption, and how you conduct your business is important. And so I think that's the purpose of this, and that's what a lot of folks have in here. And I'll just go through the quick changes in this, and then I'll let you comment. This may here, when I read this, I was unsure about this. The board may forward any communication to me. What's interesting is the only thing I could think of is it was something against me, and you wouldn't want me to know about it. I don't know. I couldn't come up with why it's may and not shall, because if I'm going to put communications on the agenda, I kind of have to know about them. And this is a written communication. So I wasn't sure about that. May, you can chime in on that. And then we had talked about just in this section of the communications that the superintendent and/or chair shall notify the sender that their email communication was received. And maybe what we'll do is just write written. Every now and then you might get a handwritten letter or a note. Down the bottom, the board, this cross out here. However, the aforementioned time limitations may be waived by the board. I thought it was better written in another policy that said the board may, by a majority vote, decide to cancel or adjust these time limits, which I think allows you the flexibility to add more time or end it where you want, so you can move on. That's up to the board. And I had this in here, and I'm not real sure it belongs here. I think it belongs in minutes, to be honest with you. That anything emailed to the board and read during present to speak will briefly be summarized in meeting minutes. When you look at the communications portion of this policy, it basically says that any communication that's presented one day later than 1 day prior to the meeting will be reviewed by the chair and vice chair of the board and may be presented at their discretion in open or executive session or held until the next meeting. So if someone sends something 6 hours before the meeting, it just says that you have the opportunity to review it. But this line here, I'm not sure we want to get into what goes in the minutes when it's about this, even though we're tying them together. Does that make sense? Why is that separated like that? I don't know. Okay, so let me be quiet and you want to go right in order here and you can just chime in on this first statement here. Brianna, you know. Go ahead, Ann.
I think shall is important because I think you really need to be aware of all communication going to and from the board that way, or at least to the board. Yeah, I guess really to and from. So I think the word shall would be more appropriate than the word may.
Oh, I'm just going to put this in bold right now. The way I have this, I cannot see this. So I'm going to put this in all caps. Sorry about that. Do you, Brianna and Herb, are you okay with that? I think this is what Ann's talking about over here.
And shall, may is kind of permissive. It gives the board a little leeway. If it's shall, then it's we have to do it.
Mhm.
I think it's, it's kind of like a two-way street, right? So I think the intent of that is if I get a communication that's intended for the full board, it's addressed to the board, then I'm going to send it to you. And I think this is the same thing. If you want to include it in part of your communications, I have to have it. Otherwise, I'm not sure it's considered a communication. Maybe I don't know. It must still be FOIable, but the person that would get it would be me. So I don't know. If someone has a good reason to change it, I'd love to hear it. I did not run this past the attorney yet, so I can ask her too when this goes for her review.
I think for transparency, it's really important that you hear all sides of an issue. When you're developing whatever you're developing to ultimately bring to us for approval. So I think it's important that you are able to access all communication.
Brianna, I'm reading your facial expressions. Are you staring at the red or the yellow?
I'm trying to figure out like what this means. Communications that are read.
So,
I mean, we don't really do that, do we?
Well, and this is why I said we should tie these together, is what's weird about this is that, so this is public participation, right? And so, last meeting you had someone say, I'm going to read my communication into the minutes, which they really aren't doing. When you get to the minutes section, and you'll see this in all sorts of policies, that the present to speak is typically not part of minutes. It's not one of your actions. It's just someone, sharing their feelings. So we put that into minutes, but I think the intent of this is that because part of present to speak, someone could say, I would like you to read, I'm not going to be at the meeting, I'm going to send you a communication, and I want it read into the minutes, and that's into the meeting. And that's not necessarily what we would do. This is how you deal with the communication. It goes into the office here, and it's available.
I also think, Brianna, it means that if one of us or all of us get an email from a resident, but they do not CC Phil, that it's important for us to pass it on to Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For his awareness.
Right. Okay.
I think that's the shall piece.
So are you okay with this, the red up top? No disruptive conduct shall be permitted. That
Yeah.
statement.
Oh, before we go on, Phil, can I just say one more thing about that communication
Yep.
paragraph? I really like the superintendent and our chair shall notify the sender that their communication was received. I think that's an excellent way to let people know that their communication has been received and read. And I don't think we all need to do that, but it's important that either you or the chair
Yeah.
let them know that.
It really puts a level of accountability on it.
Mm.
That's what it does.
So back to disruptive conduct.
Mhm. I think that part's fine.
Kirby, okay with what's there?
Yeah, it looks okay to me, Phil.
Okay. Oh, this is, so I don't know if, this is really interesting. I looked at a bunch. These are all over the place. The number of minutes for present to speak. It says that you're not going to exceed 20 minutes, but if you're limited to 5 minutes, you might only have 4, right? I giggled at it too, to be honest. So thank you for that laugh, because I just feel like, you know, if you're going to allow 4 people to speak, you know, most people are done under that, and you could allow someone to speak longer than that, depending on the meeting. So if you knew you had something, a hot topic coming up before present to speak, the board could say, look, we're willing to extend present to speak to 40 minutes, and we are going to typically allow, we normally allow 5. We're going to allow 3 tonight, or now we allow 3, but we're going to allow 5. You could make that adjustment by a majority vote. What are your thoughts on the 5 to 3? I saw 2 minutes, and I'm like, you know, is 2 minutes too long, or too short rather? I don't know. Most people are done in 2 minutes. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we could change it, Phil, either 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, if in 2 or 3 minutes, they should be able to, you know, give their little talk and the information that they want the board to know.
Yep.
I would say 3 minutes max.
I would agree with 3.
And again, my purpose was really in changing this was looking at other policies, but also allowing more people to speak if you keep to your 20 minutes timeline.
Mhm.
Is there any way to talk about this in an out of the box way? I think some folks in our public are feeling very frustrated because if they send a communication, it is read and maybe we tell them that we got it. If they do present to speak, they ask questions and share information, but never receive any confirmation or reply from us. And so I think it's frustrating, and perhaps people don't understand that present to speak is really an add-on to an agenda. I think you had said that to me, Phil, right? Like lawyers don't even recommend it because it's like if you were in the middle of a meeting with your colleagues at work and then a customer came in and started saying things, I don't know, is that what it's like? How do we, we had the workshop about the test scores and whatnot, and that was a much more open forum. And I think there were some things accomplished at that meeting that otherwise hadn't been able to be because it was more open and back and forth. So are there ways we can do that more often for conversational purposes?
So
I know it's tricky, but we've got to.
Yeah.
I
So
would really, yeah.
what about this, Brianna? No, I appreciate you, and that was the struggle of me when I saw the 2 minutes. And I'm like, man, they're going to come after the superintendent thinking I'm trying to stop their voices, and that's not my intent here. I wondered if, gosh, I'm cautious of this because I don't want to. I'm not real sure how to do it, and I would be curious to know if you left it up to the chair. If you said you know, you have to make a statement. I think your point is you have to make a statement here. So something like, No, and I'm just typing. The board will not respond to members of the public during present to speak. However, the chair may choose to respond at the end of the meeting. I don't know.
Right, so if somebody says something during present to speak, my best hope of being able to respond to them in some way is to wait for my closing remarks.
Yep.
But even then, it's not conversational at all.
Right. And that's, I mean, so, and this is why, you know, if someone called me, right, they have access, I can give them, there's back and forth there.
Mm-hmm.
If someone called you, there can be back and forth. But there can be, but during your meetings, you can't make any decisions when you're alone. And you don't act as a board member when you're alone, or when you're alone. You only act as a board member when you're together. But you could provide some information just like I would. But I'm trying to put this on the chair, so whoever chair is has the responsibility to either respond, and you also have the opportunity during board comment, to be honest with you, if you have board comment, you kind of have the right to do it if it's in there, and which you have, or, you know, the chair could request the superintendent to respond.
How come the assessment test results meeting was different? It was a workshop, so it was something different.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other topic that comes up in that kind of format, or just that one time? Is that annually happening?
I have no idea. That's up to the chair.
Because well, you all know, you're at those meetings. Some folks are pretty frustrated. And I think maybe there's a misconception about present to speak and the purpose of it, but not feeling heard is a problem, it seems. When we can't write back to the emails, that's hard. At least tell them that we got them. That's a step in the right direction, but I don't know. I want people to feel like there can be discussion. It's not us
During your
versus
board
them.
meetings, no, that's what's hard, is during your board meetings, there's not supposed to be discussion. Your
Right,
board
so
meetings would be
that's
5
why I
hours
was
long.
saying, out of the box, can we like have a coffee house once every season or something? Just Q&A.
So I think what I would suggest, because I don't know that that's part of this policy, Brianna,
Right, okay.
I understand your purpose. How would you write that into this present to speak policy? The board will.
I would feel better about restricting things like you have only 3 minutes to speak and no one's going to say anything back to you, if there was some other way that there could be back and forth communication. I know once a season meeting for Q&A is not a perfect solution. I don't know.
You know what I like to think in an ideal world is people are coming during present to speak. They're letting us know how they feel about topics we have been discussing and we will be discussing. So in an ideal world, it seems like we should be able to incorporate their question or concern into our discussion during the meeting. Especially if, no, you know what I'm saying? You know, if we're talking about masks, you know, and people have said how they feel, then when we're discussing it amongst ourselves, we can take it.
I'm sorry, Ann. I'm laughing because most board policies say that you can only, the things you can speak to in present to speak are only the things on the agenda.
That's right.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Herb. I'm not making that up.
Yeah.
Not only
So
that,
if we,
you don't even have to have present to speak on your agenda. The board is meeting.
yeah,
It's kind of a little courtesy to listen to the public,
hmm,
and we should be doing that. But basically, we don't have to have them speak at our meetings at all.
I
Yeah.
think some people don't know that, but also if you cut it out of there, we would have a really big problem.
Which is maybe the time to talk about that, Brianna, is during the, update of this policy. Because typically you're an agenda that follows Robert's rules, you have 2 present to speak. Typically, they would want you to have 0. You
Mhm.
have board comment. Most attorneys would say, you do your business, you conduct your business as a board, and that's the end of it. So I would say you've already reached out and kind of have more opportunity than most boards. When I tell people, other superintendents, I'm like, yeah, we have present to speak in the beginning and the end. They're like, are you crazy? And we want to provide people the opportunity to share their thoughts. But typically the things they're sharing their thoughts on are not going to be things that you're acting on that night. Typically. So I don't know if the statement you write in the end here is the board be consider to foster, again.
Yeah, I don't think we really have to do that, Phil.
I agree. I'm trying to find balance here.
Well,
Because I
yes,
understand.
that's why I'm asking about a different format, maybe a different sort of meeting or something. I don't know.
You start doing that and you open Pandora's box and you get into a debate with them. We don't want to do that. We want to listen to them and
Yeah.
certainly, listen to what they're saying and maybe change our policy or whatever. But to get into a discussion with them, I don't know if that's a good idea.
and I think we should take what we've heard into consideration, as we're discussing and making our decisions. I think that's the value of it, is we've heard what people have to say, and it can become part of our decision-making process.
Right.
I agree with that. What about when they ask questions?
If there's a time during the meeting when we're talking about that topic and a natural answer comes up, I think that could be a time to.
If they have a question, I think we should do what I do anyway. If I get a phone call and I get questions, I'd refer it back to the superintendent. Him answer the question and take the heat for it.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I've had that before.
Yeah.
I mean, this is thoughts out loud. So I'm not, and I don't know what the rest of I agree with Herb. You want to be careful about, because again, if you think your meetings are long now,
Mhm.
it is the board, you're a group of elected officials. You are acting together. The folks that are watching are typically only there, they're watching. They can provide their feedback, similar to when whether you approve or disapprove of something, or during your board comment, your comments should be, I support masking all of our students as a mandatory practice, or I don't approve it, and here's why. It shouldn't be back and forth, even between board members. Typically that you would, if you've ever watched a board meeting where they control the mics, you're recognized and you speak when you're recognized, and your mic is turned off, and then everything is through the chair. So we run things a lot looser in Willington, which I think is a benefit to our small community.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I go back to remember that we have more opportunity than more districts than I know of with multiple opportunities to speak. I think, Brianna, maybe we need to consider creative ways to, and I don't know, maybe you put that on me. I mean, I did it for the I did it for the school building project early on, where I went out and did, you know, the workshops for people and answered questions, and it wasn't with board members, because you don't want to make it a board member or a board meeting or have to post. But that's something that we consider. Maybe that's a better solution. Maybe as a give and take, that's what this, you know, the board may request the superintendent to hold question and answer periods. I don't know, I'm spouting here.
No, it's a good idea when we have, especially when we have big issues, big changes, big things that are going on, like the building, like the school building committee and all.
But do you want to, I don't want to drive this conversation, but I think I'd rather see me do this, I'm volunteering myself, than do it at one of your meetings, because it changes the layout and format of your meetings, Brianna, to be honest with you, it really does. If you're gonna follow Robert's rules, you probably should follow Robert's rules. It changes it to a workshop model, which your meetings are not a workshop model.
Right, that's what I was saying. It has to be some different sort of meeting.
But you're accessible. I mean, you know, you have an email, they have an opportunity to communicate your thoughts.
And I can write back.
You're not acting as a board member, but you can share that stuff, sure.
Complicated.
It is complicated.
Do you see how it looks to the public? I think it looks like there's a huge wall. And it's not always transparent, and that's not the case necessarily, but I think that's how it's perceived sometimes. And like I said, the workshop that we did, there was a lot of great back and forth, I thought, and it seemed to help grow positivity within everyone, I thought. But I get that that's not really this meeting's purpose. So that's why I was asking about doing something a little bit different. Okay, I'm gonna stop now.
Are you making that recommendation during present to speak, though, that the chair can respond during present to speak?
She has, well, that has happened before, that our chair has commented on something that was asked or mentioned about.
But it's not a give and take. The person does their present to speak, and the chair's not gonna have a conversation with them. If you do that with one, you're gonna do
Yeah.
that with all.
If a question is asked, I would hope it would be answered. Right, I know. And sometimes questions are asked to be thought-provoking rather than because a person is looking for an answer.
And you're no longer meeting as a board, you're on present to speak. So the board discussion back and forth, it's not that portion of the agenda, which is, you know what I mean? It's quirky.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep trying to figure out how.
So maybe, go ahead, Ann, sorry.
I have a suggestion. What if we, I don't really like the idea about the chair addressing some questions but not others. I don't think that's really fair, but perhaps we could have a general policy that if someone does have a question, they're encouraged to contact you, Phil, and get an answer of accurate information to that question. And then you could have a give and take with that person. That could become a conversation. You know, you could discuss that with the person, I guess, offline, as they say.
That's up to all of you.
I think that if we let the chair answer somebody's question, but not somebody else's question, I don't think that's fair.
So what if I deleted that? respond to members of the public during present to speak. However, I did it twice, sorry. The chair could request the superintendent respond after the meeting.
Or you could put it on the person that's speaking and say they could contact the superintendent, you know, or if, unless you do want to be the one to contact them, but
That would
They
be hard to keep track of.
yeah, they could contact you if they really wanted to have a good conversation about their concern.
Okay.
Is that,
Why was present to speak added in the first place?
I have
'Cause
no
this was
idea. I
like
don't-
before social media, when people needed a different way.
I
to-
think so, and it's interesting in town because all the boards run their meetings and always have. Everybody lean on you on this one, but
Yeah,
all the boards, I think, have operated their meetings very differently. I think there's certain meetings in town that are more free for all, and others that are more controlled with.
I think even we've had meetings where we haven't had present to speak. If it's a special meeting, an emergency meeting or something like that, you probably wouldn't have it in there. And as you say, some boards, I don't think have it, not too many, but a few do.
I think it's important because except for emails and letters, it's really our only communication. It's our chance to hear what the public is thinking, you know.
Yeah,
So maybe this needs, what I just highlighted needs to come out, and this just needs to come up as a separate conversation point. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
most of the boards that have present to speak operate with it similar to what we're doing. You know, the public gives their little talk and we listen to it. And that's not the end of it, but we don't respond. We don't get into a discussion or anything like that with them.
Right.
Otherwise, your meeting would go on forever.
That must feel frustrating for those folks, especially when they're so passionate about a topic. So, but I guess if they can email you, Phil, to get a response, as long as they know that's there.
So can I take all of this out then, what I have highlighted? I think the bottom
Mhm.
part is in, and we can discuss, I think the middle part there to foster public participation. I think that we just bring that up as a board conversation about how to, talk about, that you thought the data presentation was, the conversation was successful, and how do we do that more often without sacrificing you getting through your business of your meetings.
Yes, separate. That's what I was meaning.
Okay.
Somehow. And I
the
know
red
that
that's-
could feel, sometimes people aren't happy. And so if you were going to have a conversation like that, you would need to know that you might be under a bit of heat. But as adults and community members, especially on the Board of Education caring for our children, we should be able to hold a conversation and have mutual respect. I would hope.
Usually people don't call me too often, Brianna, for good things, so.
What? I'll write that on my calendar to do next week.
Every now and then. It's okay, though. It's part of the job. So are you okay with what is here in the red? Or the board may, by a majority vote, decide to cancel or adjust these time limits. The board will not respond to members of the public during present to speak. However, the chair could request a community member contact the superintendent.
Yeah, seems okay to me.
Okay.
It sounds like only if the chair suggests that you can be contacted.
They can email me at any time. and
Yeah.
they don't use it.
Okay, that presupposes that. that
I
they-
think the idea is that the chair is just literally reminding them, like, please send your communication to the superintendent.
Okay.
So can
very
we say
good.
suggest instead of request?
Yeah, that sounds good. I was gonna say,
something like that.
yeah. Suggest.
Maybe our chair could speak to this whole present to speak thing and explain why that it is not in fact a requirement on our agenda, and that we do hold extra because we want that communication with our public. And the reason why we can't have like open conversation during the meeting all the time. Maybe there's just time to review all of that, because for me, coming in new, I didn't understand any of those things either. So I wonder if others just need a clarification about the point of it.
I think it's even more confusing when different boards in town operate
Mm-hmm.
in a different
Yeah,
manner.
right. Or if people move from a different town, they're used to a certain way things work and then get here. And what's the point of a present to speak if no one can answer my questions, is what some of them might be thinking, or why is this even on here? Okay.
Okay, so do you want to send this to the board the way it is? Or do you need more time with this at another meeting?
What did we decide about the minutes?
Well, that's next. That's the next.
Okay,
item.
sorry.
Okay, I still have a little concern about the chair could suggest. Could we say, however, the community member could contact the superintendent at any time for additional information at any time? Rather than it being only when the chair suggests it?
They can at any time anyway, right? So is that just a reminder? Are you trying to take the heat or the pressure off of the chair to say
Well, let's
so, or
just-
give permission?
Once
What is
again,
bothering
I'm
you?
just trying not to make it be certain people, like the chair might suggest to person A that they should call the superintendent, but not, or
Yeah.
maybe it's only if they have questions that she would make that suggestion.
So
Maybe
maybe she could do a reminder at the beginning of present to speak. So it's
Mhm.
not just like this person said something, this public person spoke, and so then she's like, well, you could email your question to Phil. And this person, she doesn't say anything.
Mhm.
Does that
Yeah.
help?
That would be good to work it into the beginning of introduction to present to speak, like Brianna said.
I see what you're saying, Ann. That makes sense too.
So is that clear, Ann, what it says now?
However, the community may make contact the superintendent. Yep, okay. For clarification or at any time or.
Mhm.
Well, not at any time. I don't.
No.
Well, they
You have
can
other
reach out
things
to you,
need to
but
do. Yeah,
I had to
if
send
you're
it out.
asleep,
Business hours.
oh, for
I'll leave it at that.
clarification or for well, just leave it at that. That's fine, Phil, thank you.
Okay, so you want to bring this to the board
Yes,
and have some, okay. And
do we,
I realize this may change some as you get to minutes. I'm not sure. What were you gonna say, Brianna?
does it say somewhere in there that it can be eliminated altogether? Present to speak can be,
No, that's just
Eliminated.
additional information. It's, you wouldn't, right, I mean, well, the board has the right to eliminate present to speak for sure.
does it say that, or does the public know that? Like some
Um,
of them don't understand that it's a bonus in the first place. If we were to
I
take
think
it
that
off
would be
of the
part of
next
the discussion.
agenda, people would be very nervous about why that happened and be
Wouldn't
concerned,
that
I'm
be
sure.
part of the discussion when you do this policy though, just to talk about the
Okay.
present to speak?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that you would, I mean, you do have the ability in this to cancel or adjust these time limits. I mean, you've always had that ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and if we did do anything, we'd have to change this policy, correct?
What do you mean?
If we change present to speak or eliminated it or, did any changes like that.
Well, not necessarily if for one meeting, but if you just said, look, I'm not gonna put it on the next agenda,
Mhm.
you could do that. But it's not, I think it's more about your regular meetings, right? That's where you have present
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
Which sometimes they're jam-packed too, so I could understand saying, it's budget time, we can't do that right now today. Oh,
Was that me or her? Oh, phew.
What?
You froze for a second.
I did. Oh, I hope I was making a good face. Was it a nice face?
Okay, so I will close this one then and move on to minutes. Okay, so what I did was I pulled in the things that for FOI, what you have to, for meeting minutes to meet the statute, what you have to have in your minutes. So shall include the following, basically the time, place, and date, who's there, the general idea of the matters that, for which action was recommended. So just general feedback, any motion or resolution and the, general idea around it, with the vote, any decisions for future meeting agendas, any instructions to staff, a brief statement of the board member may be included. This is really your board comment, I think, at the end, but this could be during the meeting as well. And then if you go into executive session, who's there? So this really, I mean, you think about what we put into our minutes now, where I went from 21 pages last time to 9, and we still in the 9 pages have way more in there than what this requirement states right here. So there's this, which is directly from another policy. The comment in here about that was from the last portion about the public participation is in here. Communications emailed to the board and read during present to speak will be briefly summarized in meeting minutes. So that means it's not going to be word for word, because it's actually not supposed to be in there word for word. And that was what the attorney did, and that's all I'll address for now because the digital recordings. So thoughts on this part?
In the list there, on the minutes have to show the voting. Do you have that on there? Remember.
Yes, I think it's this right here, how they're resolved, any motion, how it's resolved in their disposition. So whether yay or nay, and whether they abstained or dissented.
Do we need to include time into executive session and time out of executive session? Or isn't that important there?
As a legal requirement, no.
Okay.
But I think it's something we do just for timekeeping. I think that would fall into this, to be honest with you, even though it's not about this place and date.
Okay.
If we stuck to this, your meeting minutes would be significantly shorter. It would get away from the back and forth, and just get to some more of the specific, if there's just an overall discussion, or if there was actually a vote on something.
What are important instructions to the staff?
So I took that as like, we expect all staff to do something, and the superintendent's you're gonna ask the superintendent to do something. I was thinking about the implementation of our current mitigation strategies. That's how I was, told the superintendent too.
Maybe closing school a little early at the end of the year, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
I was actually going to look beyond it and see if I can find that anywhere else, because I wasn't sure about that one. I took this from a CABE policy, because really I'm your only employee, which is a little weird, but. And you don't need to decide this tonight. If you want some time to think about this, I can also pull my law book and show you what's in the law book if you want. But this is the expectation. If someone wanted to FOI something about a meeting, this is the expectation of what is in those meeting minutes.
Phil, is there anything in the policy that would determine, I guess maybe the time frame? In other words, we have a meeting, we have the minutes taken, and they have to be posted within so many hours.
Yeah, it's further down, Herb. It's
That's
nothing, it's already there. Yep. This is you have to have the, you have to show the, and it's really to show the votes, who voted what way. You have to produce that in writing within a certain amount of time. Do you want some more time with this, or do you want to bring this to the board? What would you like to do?
I don't have a copy of this, Phil.
So let me send this one to you then, Herb. Is that what you're thinking? Or do you want to see if there's any other ways? I thought this was okay, the way they listed. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's because it's from CABE. They're the ones that wrote this, Connecticut Association of Boards of Ed. I can review some other policies and see if there's a different way that they've written these things out, other districts, and email it to you when I email this. Is that something you want, or what are you thinking about? Just time.
It's probably okay. I like the listing, but as I said, I haven't jumping around, so I can't tell whether
Sorry.
the legal end of it is taken care of. In regard to posting and making it available to the public. So I guess you've got that on there, Phil, anyway, more than what I can see.
Yeah, I mean, this is all what's already up there. The only update is the red.
Yeah.
Herb, do you want me to read you that paragraph? Board minutes shall be available in unapproved form within 72 hours of a board meeting. One copy of the official minutes shall be maintained in the board office and shall also be posted on the district website. Is that your question? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have it in front of me now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I'm okay if you want more time with this. Do you, I mean, that's your decision if you want. I mean, you could also just respond back and I can send this to you. And if you say everyone says on their own, just email me back and say, you know what, I've thought about it, changes are okay, and send it to the full board, then we could do that. If you say, no, I'd like to discuss again in committee, then, I think if one person says that, then you come back to committee with it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay. I just had that one question.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to send it to the board also.
You send it to the board, Phil.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to take off this portion because I'm going to recommend that you do a separate policy. I thought that it would be part of minutes or vote recording, but it's not. There's people are doing a separate policy now for digital video recording of Board of Education meetings. So I'll get, and I'm sure that CABE is going to come up with a new one because the extension that just went out with the ability to do hybrid meetings still. So I want to make sure our policy meets this. So this will be a separate one. So you won't see that on there when you get this. Okay, so let me close this. Okay, this use of private vehicles by district employees on school business. I basically was I was asking questions a year and a half ago now at this point. And when I was asking questions, we ended up calling our insurance provider And they ended up sharing, they said, can we see your policy? And I said, sure. And they said, well, we have lots of recommendations for you now based upon your policy. And I said, perfect. So these actually came through our insurance provider, Kerma. And they wanted to add in. So basically I took everything that they took and said in red, and this is what I would pass through the attorney myself. You know, that would be my recommendation once you're done with it. So everything in red here is I would say that you're simply clarifying some of these things. So covered and insured, carrying at least the minimum instead of saying carrying the minimum. So I don't know if do you want me to go through each of these individually, or do you want to read it?
When is there a staff member driving a student around in their personal vehicle?
On a very, very rare occasion.
Right, like
Very rare.
emergency situation, missed the
Correct.
bus, mom.
And
yeah.
that person already has to have their information on file. In the past, typically that would be an administrator or a counselor or a school social worker.
Mhm.
I will tell you, since I've been here, I think maybe this has happened one time. And it was in an emergency. Something had happened with the student's family, and that student needed a ride home. And so, you know, after trying to get everyone, you can't get the emergency contacts because the family obviously could provide permission for the emergency contact to pick them up. They couldn't get anybody. And so we finally got the parents and realized there was an emergency. And they said, look, if you could drive them home, that would be great. And so that's what this policy just basically provides the protection and lets us know what we need on file. It does not require any member of our staff to do this. So if I said, hey, middle school principal, drive this student home, they could say, no, thank you. What this does is it allows an out if that was the last opportunity the person was willing to do that and we had this information on file, it would allow that individual to do it safely and have you covered and them covered. But yes, rare occasion.
And no parent permission is required because it's an emergency and unanticipated?
No, I think there would be parent permission in this situation.
Hmm. Usually for field trips or anytime the kids are leaving school, there's a parent signing a form of some sort. But if this is more emergency and unanticipated,
there's nothing in here about that, Ann, and you know what? That's a question I think I would ask the attorney.
okay.
Phil, do you still have that one section in there in this policy, 354144, use of vehicles by district administrators on school business? Is that the last paragraph?
Yeah, the board recognizes that in special circumstances, district administrators may need to use.
Last sentence.
Yeah.
District may, that's kind of permissive. Potentially assume liability for any accident claim, which exceeds the driver's automotive liability coverage.
I think you could write may, and it's the same as what it is without the may, to be honest with you, because the bottom line is the way this policy is written is the person's their private insurance would be the first level of insurance, and then it would be the board level of insurance.
Do we have coverage for that?
We do.
How often do we have private vehicles being used in our system?
So like I said, I think this is my fourth year, and I think it's happened one time. So let's see, 360. out of, we'll call 700 days. I've had this happen once.
Didn't you say though, sometimes the personal vehicles are not for student transport, but they have to go get a part for something or hardware store run, is that right?
Yeah, but that's not what this is about.
This is different, okay.
Yeah. It's all tied to.
So a district employee would have to get permission, wouldn't they, if they're gonna take
Well, if
a,
they go to the hardware store, no. I mean, they just go to the hardware store and grab something. They're on their own liability at that point in time. But I think that if this is talking about transporting a student,
yeah,
my assumption is, I would err on the side of caution, honestly. I would not transport a student without parent permission
yeah,
unless it was an absolute emergency and we knew we had other family members to care for the child. We're never going to turn over a child into a situation where we don't know, who's got the next layer of parental rights. So I could ask the attorney that question though, because I am curious about that, and there's nothing in there, and it really gets to this section here that's about students. This one here. I don't have any rush on this policy either. I'm glad to get some more feedback on this from the attorney. This only went through the insurance company, so if you want, I can send this to the attorney and see what she has to say about the parent.
yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Brianna, you okay with that?
Yes.
So the only other thing I would say for future meeting agenda items that is the Narcan's one, is the second one would be sorry, my brain is foggy today, would be the recordings. So I want to find out, I want to see if CABE has something new coming out with the new legislation that's out. And really, we're talking about Zoom recorded meetings, how long you have to keep them. Some places say you store them for a year. They're not considered to be your minutes. It's just, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into it. So I have a generic policy, but I'll already call it outdated because the changes were before the hybrid update. Any other policies that you can think of that we need to come back and to address? My screen's doing crazy stuff here.
Just the riding in the car.
Yep, that'll be on there. We'll bring that back up once we have some answers on that. And I'll send you that once I get responses from the attorney.
Okay.
Okay, no other policies?
I just wanted to ask if the COVID ones are considered temporary.
So the main layer of policy is your board policy. And the next layer of policy down is any of like the staff handbooks or student handbooks. Those are all considered to be policy as well.
Mhm.
And when they're a little more flexible, meaning they might change, it doesn't fall under board policy. It's just part of what your business operations is and you require me to do. So that, as your CEO. So it's you voted on that mitigation kind of guide as a general, just because it's so specific to what we're doing now. But we adjust our policies, our school level policies on a regular basis. If we need to update something or change something, we do it in the staff handbooks and student handbooks, and those are considered to be policy as well. It's just like a subset.
Okay.
So at the next meeting, Phil, we'll be taking up 5141 administering medication. There's
Yeah, and I'll send you a draft, Herb.
new medications that are going to kick in on this one.
So we already have the policy there. What I'll do is I'll send you the new language that I'm proposing. That's just, it's specific to Narcan, really.
Okay.
It'll be in addition to a policy you already have. And I'll make sure if the attorney has any feedback on those beforehand, because we want to get the Narcan one right, to be honest with you. Some of that is not our thought process. It's a protection. So I'll ask our attorney that as well. All right. Nothing else?
One
All
other question.
right. What'd you say, Herb? Sorry.
In regard to transporting students and things of that kind, are the staff aware of the policy, and do they understand the ramifications of transporting students?
Yep. I think that's actually part of their staff handbook.
Okay.
There's a section of it. We good?
Good. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Andy. Took a deep breath
Do
there.
we have another meeting set up? When is our next meeting?
No, I don't have
We're not
anything
set up
yet.
at this point. Okay, very
I'll have
good. Thank
Brenda
you.
do it.
Okay, sounds good.
That works for you.
Mhm.
Just trying to figure out good times. I know we're getting close here for end of the year and the madness for everybody's schedule. So I figure I'll have Brenda do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. If you have nothing else, it is 8:08 and we can adjourn.
Okay, thank you all.